healing CPTSD. So what does it mean to actually heal? This is the one of the most common questions I get is, okay, how do I heal from this? Well, you have to understand what healing actually is versus what trauma is. So if you had to describe in your own words, what does it mean to heal? What would you say? Trauma can be anything that causes us to change in an undesirable way and is distressing to us. So you can go through a distressing event, and it's not that there's one type of thing that causes everyone trauma. So two people can go through the same situation, and one will be traumatized and the other will not. So there's not a one size fits all when it comes to trauma. So we have to recognize that we're not to judge others for what traumatized them, and we're not to judge ourselves. And so you have to forgive yourself and give yourself that grace, that space to recognize that you're a unique individual, and what traumatized you is nothing for you to judge yourself by, to beat yourself up about. Um, we don't need to feel ashamed that we were traumatized. But trauma is also nothing to be proud of. When we experience a trauma, realistically, it causes a regression. Um, it causes us to be developmentally stunted. And every person probably gets traumatized in one small way or another in their lifetime. Um, but healing is the opposite of that. Healing is growth instead of regression. Healing is optimizing, it's development, it's progression. Healing is not a fixed state. It's not like one day you finish my course and then you're healed and then you're good for life. Like once healed, always healed, or something like that. It's not how healing works. With healing, it's a growth in your life and a development in your life that never ends. And so you always want to be growing and developing and growing and developing and pressing more and more toward maturity. Because just like trauma stunts our growth, healing is maturity. To be in the healed state is to mature. But when are you done maturing? There's no such thing as being done maturing. So it doesn't mean you'll never hit a point where we'll be able to call you healed, but it means that the healing transitions into a natural life growth, and you will continue to grow for the rest of your life, and you should. Even if we were living forever, we would want to continue to grow. You would learn new things, you develop new skills, new talents, new abilities, and you become increasingly wise. So wisdom is infinite. So uh, if you're on the journey towards growth and healing, you're on the right path. But what can hold us back is this feeling of trauma, of being bogged down, of being stopped, of being overwhelmed, of being caught, of being suspended, of being arrested, of being delayed. So, do you feel stuck in your trauma? Use tonight as an opportunity to visualize the path out. By recognizing not just what is trauma and what's causing your trauma, but to actually see, as I paint the picture for you, how you can overcome those things. I always use the three B's to help to simplify healing from trauma, and that's beliefs, bias, behavior. That's because when we're talking about complex trauma, emotional, mental trauma, we're talking about maladaptive beliefs, maladaptive bias or way of thinking, and maladaptive behavior. Does that make sense? And so let me give you an example of how this works. Let's say you get attacked. Maybe someone comes and they physically assault. This could be a traumatizing event. It's not always traumatizing for everyone. but it could be a traumatizing event. Commonly, it is. What happens is your subconscious mind takes a snapshot of everything surrounding that, what the person looked like, where you were, what the smells in the air was, what the songs were that were playing. And it says, we need all of this information locked in here in the subconscious mind so that in 1/12 of a second, if we ever see anything that matches this situation, we know to give you the pangs of distress, anxiety. We know to alert you, to make you feel dysregulated so that you'll realize and you'll save us. So your emotions are the subconscious mind communicating to you, the conscious person. So the subconscious mind then gets locked in a trauma mode. The trauma mode is that it's highly triggerable or sensitive to those sights, sounds, smells, or the way that person looked. So that when you see other people like that, or other sights and sounds like that, you get distressed in your body, and you feel it in your body. And that physiological distress that you're feeling inside of your body, we describe as trauma. It feels a bit illogical sometimes. Like, why why am I looking at this guy who I know didn't attack me, but feeling all the same stress like I'm being attacked, even though I'm not being attacked anymore? It's illogical. Well, hold on. It's not illogical. It's emotional, but the system is built on a logical basis as a way of keeping you safe. Because the amygdala can respond in 1/12 of a second, that's your intuition, that's your prejudice, it can keep you safe from emergency situations when you don't have time to actually analyze and judge. What happens when we stay stuck, though, in that traumatized state, is we rely on the emotions, we rely on the intuition, we rely on prejudice, and then we don't develop our frontal lobe, and it starts to go soft and dormant. We don't develop the prefrontal cortex. We don't use the canopy of the brain, this wonderful machine, this operating system that you have. It has the ability to analyze and develop and critically discern situations, but you don't use it because you're still caught in the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fight, freeze, fawn. And this is all automatic, 1/12 of a second. As soon as it sees something, bam, it's dysregulated. Make sense? So that's how trauma occurs. To get out of the traumatized mindset, we have to retrain the brain. To retrain the subconscious, we have to teach the subconscious that those things that were once triggers or sensitivities are no longer useful to us as triggers. We should now reprogram them as something that we are indifferent to. Does that make sense? We have to desensitize the brain so it doesn't still look at a guy that looks the same way, or the sights and the sounds that were associated with that original memory. It no longer categorizes that as a trigger. This is not difficult. It can happen sometimes very fast. Usually this is done by exposure therapy. So like I gave an example once where I was assaulted by a security guard, and he was a big guy of a particular race. And I noticed in the days following, there was some trauma in the brain because when I would see other guys of this particular race, I would start to feel anxious. So the way that I diffused that trigger is under a safe circumstance. I was at an auto parts store. There was a guy working behind the counter. He fit that description. I could feel how my intuition was telling me, don't go near him. And I went counter to my intuition and I went right up to that guy. Why? Because now I'm not in an actual life or death situation. Now I'm in a safe situation at an auto parts store, but I need my brain to be retrained so that it doesn't look at one guy of a particular race and say, oh, this type of guy is always, and then I'm using my whole life, I'm going to be afraid of this type of guy, right? That's staying regressed, underdeveloped in the traumatized mind. And so I went up to him and I asked him for help with my car parts. And he was very kind and very helpful. And in this case, because my trauma was minute enough, it actually only took that one interaction. And my subconscious mind recategorized guys who looked like that as safe as anyone else. So Now I can see men that look that way, and I'm not cowering and in fear. In fact, I don't even remember that trauma anymore. It doesn't come to mind just because I see a guy that looks like that. Does that make sense? And so through the exposure therapy to go directly into the thing I feared, directly into the thing that I was sensitive to, my subconscious mind was able to recategorize it because I did it under the circumstances where it was safe. So that's part one of retraining the brain. Part two is to teach ourselves through repetition to always go into the cerebral cortex, the wisest part of the brain. The problem is the cerebral cortex doesn't make judgments in 1/12 of a second. It's not the first impulse you have. The first impulse you have is the electrical, chemical impulses of the emotions. That's the first impulse that you'll have. Why? Because that's what would keep you safe in a survival situation. The animal brain, bam, it hits you with adrenaline into your system or cortisol into your system. You're going to feel the rush immediately. So you have to learn to be able to get that rush and stay still. And then go into the analytical mind, analyze, and use strategy. The analytical mind takes a little time to boot up. So that's why we use the rule of 7 seconds. Rule of 7 seconds dictates that we wait 5 to 7 seconds before responding to anything. Practice doing it for everything. Your kid asks for a popsicle, wait 5 to 7 seconds. Your husband asks you if you want to go to the store, wait 5 to 7 seconds. Your mother asks you for a favor, wait 5 to 7 seconds. Your boss asks you to do something that's totally within your job description and you want to do it, wait 5 to 7 seconds before responding. Why are we doing that? Because we're retraining our brain not to respond here in the animal brain. Because all that fawning that you've been doing, that people pleasing, that's fawn response. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. We got to train ourselves. Wake up. No. Bam. So my first impulse is to fawn, and I go, okay, I'm just going to hold that. Breathe. Blink. Think. Am I in danger right now? Am I in immediate danger? No. Okay, then I don't need my trauma response right now. What do I need? I need analytical thinking. What's that? It's to take in data, take all the data, and to form a conclusion as to how I will act that will be to my benefit. That is analytical thinking, to take in data, analyze the data to form a conclusion that will be to my benefit. Good. So now I look at the situation. Okay, my boss just asked me a question or asked me to do something. Well, I want to get my paycheck and I want the boss to see that I'm doing this and doing that, and it will be to my advantage and it's within my job description. Okay, I'm going to say yes. And meanwhile, your boss is sitting there like, hello, what's the problem? And you're like, absolutely, I would love to do that for you. Why don't you send over the email? And that way I have it in writing, and that will reduce the chances that anything could go wrong. And then I'll have that on your desk as soon as possible. I'm shooting for next week, but I don't want to promise. And your boss says, great, sounds good. And bam. And you walk away saying, wow, I'm handling things really well. I wonder why. Because you've always been this brilliant. You've always been smart enough to handle things really well. The difference now is that you've taken the time to slow down. So you've trained your brain. You've trained your brain to be able to not respond immediately in trauma mode, or react rather, but to be able to slowly respond in a way that's analytical, that's strategic. Does that make sense? So let's go over some examples that you've been struggling with. Example number one. You've been struggling with your circle, your inner circle. You've been letting people in your inner circle that are toxic, or you have people in your inner circle that are toxic, that have, maybe they've always been there. Maybe it's your own mom and you haven't cut them off yet. Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, brother, sister, boss. Okay, this is why you're sick. You keep exposing yourself to the toxin. You cannot get better. If we are poisoned, when we go to the doctor and we want to get better from the poison, the doctor will give us saline solution and water and things to drink to help us to flush our system. If you take it, it will help. But if you keep going back and drinking poison as well, you will not get better. Does that make sense? And this isn't like high level medicine, right? This is common sense. But we can see that in the physical. You know that in the physical. Understand it in the energy realm as well. That's what you're doing when you let these people who are toxic around you. When you read their text messages, their words, their emails, when you listen to what they say, when you talk to them, when you divulge information to them, you're taking in poison, poison, poison into the energy system, which is your mind. And then you wonder why your mental health is depleting or not progressing. It's because you haven't cut off the toxic person. Narcissists use all types of techniques to get you to not cut them off. The love bombing is for the purpose of making you believe they have the ability to be an amazing person so that you don't cut them off. Because they know if you ever just realize that what they are, you would just cut them off. So they want you to think that they are what they originally were when they are pouring all that energy in and love bombing. It's all a technique to make you never cut off what is truly toxic. So then when they drop the mask, and they drop the mask because this is who they really are, and they're tired because it takes a lot of work to act like a good person when you're really evil. And they go, oh, okay, good. Now I can be the jerk I truly am. And then they start treating you like garbage progressively more and more to keep opening the threshold of what you'll tolerate. And you, in your traumatized state, keep holding on to what is toxic. You stay trauma bonded to what is toxic. The path forward is simply to cut off what is toxic, to do the very thing you're afraid of. It seems hard, but it ain't complicated. It's simple. Another thing that's been holding you back is that everything or most of the things you've been doing are guided by emotion and fear. That's what's holding you back from healing. You've been guided by the reason why you dumped your boyfriend was because you were afraid he was going to dump you. You quit your job because you were afraid they were going to fire you. You're doing self-sabotagey stuff in your life because you're living in fear. The narcissist tries to promote you living in fear. So they fear monger, right? If you had a narcissistic parent, they told you how bad everything out in the world was, how bad those people were. They had the true crime playing. They're like, look what happened to that little girl. Look what happened to that woman. You're like, oh my God, it's a fearsome place to the point where you don't even think you can go outside. And they don't really let you go outside much anyway. Narcissists like to fear monger. They want you to live in fear. Why? Because this holds you back in the toxic, unhealed state, which makes you an easier victim for them to bully. Is this making sense? So how do we get out of this? We need to learn never, not sometimes, no, never to be guided by fear. Never allow fear to be your guide. Never allow fear to dictate your life. Allow love to be your guide in all cases. Does that make sense? Love and purpose should always be your motivation for everything you do. How do you do that? Pause 5 to 7 seconds before you do anything and analyze, what am I motivated by here? Is it fear or is it love and purpose? Another thing that's been holding you back is that you're putting work in and focus on things that are detrimental to you, like the worst possible outcome. You've been focusing your mind on the worst possible outcome. Oh no, what if I don't get into school? What if my kids don't come home? What if my husband is cheating? What if, and you're in these catastrophizing what if scenarios that haven't even happened yet. When you focus the mind on everything that's detrimental, you're making your subconscious live there in that state already, so it produces the chemicals and it downgrades your genes and your DNA and shortens your telomeres. And long story short, you're killing yourself because all you can picture is death and destruction. So what do? Well, we have to make the conscious effort to wake up, get out of the subconscious mind, and start getting into the conscious thinking and visualize the best possible scenario. We should always focus on, work toward the most beneficial possibility, right? So if I'm going to take my big exam to get my certification, to be a nurse, I shouldn't focus on how I could possibly fail. I should focus on how I could possibly succeed, how I may possibly be able to pass this exam. It's possible, isn't it? Yes. Focus the mind there. As a result, you'll do better on the test. And then you'll pass more, and then you'll get more of your certifications. Then you'll go out and you'll make more money. And the cycle continues as you always focus on the most beneficial possibility. It will help your mind to live in a good state so that even if it actually goes wrong in reality and it didn't turn out in the best way, up until that point where you met that trauma, that tragedy, you felt great. So now imagine facing a tragedy when you're coming off of feeling good. It's like, hmm, it's like that because I've been feeling great. I'm healthy. I've been positive mindset. I don't want anything to disturb my peace. So I'm going to take that tragedy right on the nose, head on, and just kind of brush it off my shoulder. It's not going to be as catastrophic. But when you're already tired and exhausting yourself with all the calamity and the catastrophe, and you're thinking, focusing on all the worst, and then something bad does happen, you know what you do? You go, oh, I knew it. I knew it. Why does it always happen to me? And how does that look like resilience to you? Does that look like that's going to help you get through? No, you're destroyed. And then other people come along like, what's wrong? And you're like, I paid my bill late and they charged me a late fee. People are like, a late fee? Like you're traumatized about that? Why do you seem so extra sensitive? You seem extra sensitive because you've over sensitized your system by allowing too much cortisol to go into your system, which has an adverse effect. Instead of numbing pain, the cortisol actually makes you oversensitive because you got too much of it. So now it doesn't work as a pain number anymore. So now when you hit pain, you're hurting worse than everyone else. And the rest of us are looking at you like, you can't even handle basic life. And you're like, I know what's wrong with me. This is what's wrong. Stop focusing on all the worst. Start focusing on all the best. Another thing that's been holding you back is being consumed with other people's thoughts and other people's feelings. What are they going to think? How are they going to feel? What people are going to judge me? The narcissist loves to make you worry about how everyone else is going to feel. And so they love to triangulate and bring in other people and use flying monkeys. And then even when they don't, they'll just lie and they'll come up to you and they'll tell you, you know, everyone's been talking about you. Yeah, they notice that there's something wrong. They've been asking me what's wrong with you. Right? Because the narcissist wants you to be consumed with what everyone else is thinking. That's why they use the smear campaign. They know that will be effective because you worry about other people's thoughts and feelings. Here's what you do if you want to heal. A healed person is not consumed with other people's thoughts and feelings. Doesn't worry them too much. They care to the extent that they would love for other people to have the same good experience they're having. And they may even try to assist from time to time, but they're not consumed with what other people are thinking and feeling, whether it's about them or about anything else. A healed person recognizes they only control their own thoughts and their own actions, so they don't bother worrying about other people's thoughts and actions. Another thing that's been holding you back from healing is focusing on everything that's gone wrong for you in the past and everything that you do not have. So you like to focus on the infinite void of things that you do not have and cannot control. And the narcissist loves to make you think about things you can't control. You made me act this way. Oh, I did. No, you didn't make anybody act anyway. You made me cheat. You didn't make anyone do anything. People do their own thing, right? So don't be a narcissist to yourself. Don't keep making your mind focus on all the things that you don't have and can't control. Let's get the mind focused up on our gifts and our blessings. In fact, we should always focus on our gifts and our blessings. You have a lot, but it's infinite. I mean, it's finite. It's finite. The void of things you do not have is infinite. So there's no point on looking at it and saying, I don't have kids. You don't have billions of things that exist in this universe. I don't have a husband. You don't have zillions of things. Why would you pick one thing out in the infinite void and focus on that one thing and make yourself sick for not having it? Don't do that. Focus on what you do have. Maybe you don't have a husband. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you got a dog. Maybe you don't got a dog. Maybe you got a house. Maybe you don't got a house. Maybe you got a tent. Maybe you don't got a tent, but maybe you got a hut. Maybe you don't got a hut. Maybe you got a cave, a hole. What do you have? Maybe you got a pair of shoes. Focus on what you have. And then what you have will become more. It becomes more abundant through the focus of the energy. Because he who has, more will be given to him. But he who's got the mind in lack and has not, even what he does have will be taken away from him. Pareto law of distribution. Another thing that's been holding you back is worrying about the past and who to blame. Like blaming yourself for things that happened, blaming other people for things that happened. And the narcissist loves to play the blame game. In fact, it's their favorite game in the whole world. They beat you to it before you even knew the game existed. You did this. This is because of you. Or the narcissist gossips to you about everyone else, and you feel so special because they tell you all these things that they would never tell anyone else. But what are they really doing? Just blaming everyone else. Oh, I went to work today. My boss was an idiot. And you know who else was an idiot? The people at church were idiots. And you know who else is an idiot? And that's how the narcissist talks to you. And you're like, wow, I feel really close. Like I'm really connecting to this narcissist. Look at how candid they are with me. Yeah, this is how they talk about you. They're showing you how they talk about you behind your back. I'm a victim, poor me. That's the narcissist. They always want to make themselves seem like the victim, right? So, what are you supposed to be doing in order to be in the healed state? A healed person is never concerned with past blame. They're concerned with future responsibility. The mind of the healed person is in the future and the present. What can I do? What is my responsibility? Because what I have power over is what I have responsibility over. If I don't have power over it, then I have no responsibility. So therefore, what's the point in figuring out who's to blame? There's no point. Another thing that's been holding you back is you focus on everything you're not able to do. I can't, I'm not able, I can't move out, I can't get a car, I can't get a job. You don't understand, I have cognitive decline and I have autoimmune disorders and diseases. Some of that you have is because you keep focusing the mind on the I can'ts. So instead, we want to flip and focus the mind on everything you can do. It works because then what you can do starts to grow. Focus on the possibilities. And maybe I could do that. Maybe if I tried that, I could do it. And maybe 10% of the time you'll be right, which means that you'll start picking up more and more skills, more and more abilities, right? Another thing that's been holding you back is that you've been saying yes when you should be saying no. People are asking you to do things. They're asking you for your help. They're coming to you for things. And instead of saying, oh, no, I'm sorry, you've been saying yes. And why is that? Because you thought that your job on earth was to be a servant to everyone and to help everyone. But that doesn't make sense because how can one person help 7 billion people? They can't. So then if you can't help everyone, then who are you supposed to be helping? No one? That doesn't make sense. Wait a second. Who are we supposed to be helping? That's a good question. Here's the answer. You should say yes only when it aligns with your purpose. You're supposed to be helping the people that are in your tribe or aligned with your purpose, what they're asking you aligns with your purpose. Does that make sense? For instance, a banker could be amazing at helping someone to get funds from their bank, but maybe not amazing at helping someone to pick out their produce. Instead, we would want the grocer to help with the produce. And when they do the things that are assigned with their expertise, everything works better for everyone. So rather than thinking that your job in the world is to do every job and to right every wrong and to fight every injustice, focus just on what your purpose is, which is a goal, a worthwhile pursuit that you've decided upon, and then focus fire on that. And there will be tons of people right in that lane who need your help, and help them. That's who you're supposed to be helping. If we all do that, everybody's going to get helped, right? Absolutely.